Hi everyone, Mike here. Thanks for tuning into another episode of K8MRD Radio Stuff. Today, we're going to be talking about some QRP batteries. Stay tuned. So, as I have delved into this sect of the amateur radio hobby known as QRP, I've acquired a few QRP radios. And with those radios, need batteries. Now, I could have brought out my 20 amp hour Bioenno battery or any other battery in the world, but my whole want and desire was to make my station as compact and as portable as possible. It kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and you see that big backpack that I carry, it just kept getting heavier, and I'm like, this has got to stop. So I was looking for some different batteries, and I reached out to Kevin from Bioenno. He was kind enough to send me these three guys for review. So I wanted to show them off to you. I want to show you some current draw on what we can expect out of these three different radios. We've got the Xiegu X5105, we've got the recent RS918, and we have the Xiegu G90. So just kind of wanted to show current consumption, talk about what we can expect out of the battery, out in the field. Hey, let's face it, people have a lot more free time right now. And I know a lot of states, national and state parks are still open. So what a better time to get out and do some parks on the air or summits on the air, or even just go out in your backyard and play portable radio. It doesn't have to be any kind of special thing. So let's hook these up and take a look at the batteries themselves, talk about the differences between them, and we'll see what these different radios do. Okay, so here's just a quick overview of the batteries, and then we'll get a little more in depth. Both of these guys are 3 amp hour batteries. This one here is the BLF 1203AB. This is rated for 3 amps max continuous discharge and 6 amps max peak continuous discharge. This guy over here is the BLF 1203 Whiskey that's rated for 6 amps max continuous discharge. Now, I spoke to Kevin when I was at Hamcation in Florida, and he basically, from kind of what I understand, really both of these batteries can kind of do the same thing. What some battery companies do, they actually derate their batteries. So this says 3 amps with a 6 amp peak. They're really just protecting the cells. So by not pulling as much current on them, it's basically going to prolong the life. The same BMS is in both of these. Now, they are different cells. This one is actually has 8 cells in it. So you have 4 here and 4 here. These are 18650s. I think these are 28850s. I have no idea what cells are in this one. But basically, you can kind of do whatever you want with them. Just don't really exceed that 6 amp discharge. Although actually the BMS is rated for 7 amps. So if you really needed to, you could. This guy here is a little beefier guy. This is a 6 amp hour, and this is rated for 6 amps max continuous discharge with a 12 amp peak. So a little more heavy duty. I use this one with the G90. Both of these guys I use with the other QRP radios, the X5105 and the recent RS918. So let's see what current draw we're getting out of the radios, and we can start talking about how long we can expect to use these out in the field. Okay, so here's the X5105 going off of external power. We're not using the internal power, the internal battery of this radio. You can see we're drawing 0.34 amps. I've got the brightness on like level 3. If it's all the way down, it went to about 0.27 or so. So just sitting like this on receive, you've got almost 10 hours of receive time with a 3 amp hour battery. That's pretty awesome. So now I've got it on CW. I'm going into a dummy load. I'm going to key up. We're going to see how many amps this pulls at 5 watts CW. We've got about 2.18 amps. So what that means is you can sit there and hold this down for about an hour and a half of just laying out a constant carrier before this battery is going to die. Which that's not realistic. That's not going to happen. Okay, so here is the recent RS918. As you can see, we're pulling about the same standby current as the X5105. This radio is a little bit higher power. I think it's rated as a 15-watt radio. That definitely isn't going to happen. And depending on what band you're on, you might get 3 watts, you might get 10 watts, and anywhere in between. So your current is really going to vary depending on what band you're on. On 40 meters CW, we get about 10 watts. So we're going to key down here again, transmitting into a dummy load, and we're going to see what our amp hours is with this radio. So here you can see that's up a little, maybe 11 watts we're pushing, and we're only drawing 1.84 amps. So now for the G90, the G90 is a little bit more power hungry. It's a little bit more powerful radio. As you can see, we're on standby, just received, we're drawing 0.53 amps. This is a 20 watt radio, so this is going to draw more current. So with the other two radios, I use the smaller batteries. With this guy, I like to step it up a bit, and this 6 amp hour battery is like the absolute perfect size for this radio, for what I do. Again, we're on CW going into a dummy load. So I've got the power at 20 watts. We're going to key down, see what kind of amperage we get out of this. See that? That's pulling a lot. 4.14 amps for 20 watts. So let's go down, just for giggles, and let's go to 1 watt. See what that does. I've never actually transmitted 1 watt with this, so I'll be curious. Wow, still 2.3 amps there with 1 watt. That's crazy. What does 5 watts look like? 2.79. Let's try 10. 3.3. So yeah, definitely a little more power hungry, but 6 amps is all you need. I've done quite a few activations with this setup, and I haven't come close to running out of power. So we've seen the numbers, but what does all that mean? One of the biggest questions I get on the channel about batteries is, how long is that battery going to last me? The answer is, I don't know. There's a lot involved in it. What I do know is that the way I look at it is I say, okay, well, how much does my radio draw on standby? So for example, my 891 draws a solid 1 amp just sitting there on receive. Same thing with my 7300, although that draws like 0.95, very, very similar. So I say, okay, well, if I'm just sitting there with the radio on, how long can it last me? Well, with the X5105 and the RS918, we saw about 0.35 amp hours. So with a 3 amp hour battery, we're what, 9 amp hours or so? Now, here's where it gets tricky, because it's going to depend on the mode you're using and your operating time. So when I'm out there doing parks on the air running a pileup, I'm probably almost at 50% duty cycle, probably not quite that high. So if you're going to run like FT8 portable, well, you're transmitting solid carrier for 15 seconds. So like with the G90, that's 4 amp hours for 15 seconds every other 15 seconds. So you're straight up a 50% duty cycle with that. So at 4 amp hours, yeah, you'd still probably get a couple hours of solid QSOs out of the 6 amp hour battery, but that's where your mindset needs to be. Now, I'm pretty much just a sideband guy, especially when I'm out portable. I've only done sideband portable. So sideband doesn't use quite as much current. Because it's still a form of amplitude modulation, the louder you're talking, the more it's going to kick out the volume and the power. So when you're not talking, there's nothing. So the meter goes up and down because it's putting out more or less power. So that's going to vary quite a bit. So with like the X5105, the RS918, when I was down in Florida for hamcation, I stayed at my dad's house, and I would just sit outside all day by the water and play radio. And I was using, I think I brought this battery with me, and I mean literally like all day out there, and I'm just monitoring, just putzing around, you know, made a couple DX contacts and whatnot. But they're gonna last you with these low power rigs. These low amp hour batteries are going to do a couple things. One, they're going to last you the life of the activation. Now, are you going to get out there on field day with a tiny battery like this and expect it to last all day running a pileup? No, that's not realistic. Then you'd need to bump up to something like this 20 amp hour battery. But look at the size difference. That's what we're talking about here. 6 amp hours, 20 amp hours, 3 amp hours. And the whole idea, like I said, to go QRP was to make everything smaller, lighter. I don't need a 20 amp hour battery that weighs 8 or 10 pounds when I can bring a 3 amp hour battery that weighs like nothing. You have to keep that in mind what mode you're doing. If you want to run high power, fine. I run 100 watts portable most of the time, but I need a bigger battery. Now, I can get away with my 10 amp hour battery if I'm not going to be out there long, but 100 watts I still usually draw, depending on how long I'm out there. Usually when I'm out there, when you guys see my Parks on the Air videos, I'm out there for probably about an hour, maybe an hour and a half. The majority of that pileup that you see usually happens in about 30 to 45 minutes. Really all I edit out is just all the stuff that doesn't matter. I try to get the name, the call sign, and where they are, signal report, that kind of stuff. But I edit out anything else. But those videos are not really real time, but those contacts are coming in a lot of times very, very quick like that. So it's not like I'm sitting out there all day trying to get a video with like 30 contacts in it. That's not the case. That's not what happens when you call, CQ, either SOTA or POTA. You're gonna usually typically get a good pileup going just because people are looking to chase you. So you do have to plan accordingly for how long you want to operate, how much power you're putting out, how much current your radio is going to draw. So you have to do a little bit of math. So there isn't just like a finite answer that like this battery is going to last you this long. If you're just doing basic stuff like I'm doing 100 watts, this 20 amp hour will do it. If you're doing QRP with any of these 3 radios, if you want a lot more juice, this 6 amp hour battery will do all day with any of these radios and then some. So they're fantastic batteries too. The lithium iron phosphate chemistry, you can drain pretty much completely. Your radios will turn off before the cells are actually under voltage. Plus the BMS, the battery management system in here, will also protect the cells from getting underbalanced. One other thing as far as charging, this is the charger that you can get from Bioenno. You do need a specific charger for lithium iron phosphate. Don't go using a regular lead acid battery charger or anything like that. This output is 15 volts, plus or minus 2 amps-ish. It works. There's zero indication of whether the battery is charged. There is a red and a green light, but that doesn't mean if it's charged or not. So just leave it plugged in. Can't really hurt it. I don't use this very often. I have a different charger that you can see in my other video about batteries and charging lithium iron phosphate. It's a high-tech, and I like that a lot because I can control how much amperage I'm putting in and tweak it a little bit, where this is just like, hey, we're putting in power. We don't know what we're doing, but it works. So, but it's like 20 bucks. So it works. That's kind of it. I'm rambling at this point, but I just wanted to I wanted to show these batteries because I've had a few months to use them now, and really, really happy with them. I have achieved my goal of getting everything down and compact. I can put, I usually take my X5105 with me, and I can fit, hang on, I can fit everything in, it's a mess right now, but I can fit everything in this. This is a Carhartt, like a lunchbox thing. I tried looking on Amazon to see if I could find this so I could put a link in the description. No idea. I got it. If you're in Michigan or Ohio or Indiana and you have a store called Meijer, this is where I got it. The rest of you out in the world, no clue, but find something like this. It was like 15 or 20 bucks. I think it was 15 bucks. Really cheap. So everything fits in here and I love it. So anyway, check out Bioenno. Thank you, Kevin, for supplying these batteries. As always, they're freaking awesome. I've used them, I've abused them, and I am not gentle on my equipment, and they can pass the mic test. So they should definitely work for any of you guys. So anyway, if you have any questions, leave me a question in the comment, hit the thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, Follow me on Twitter at K8MRD, and we'll see you guys next time on another episode of K8MRD Radio Stuff. Stay safe.